Have you ever felt like your own mind is rebelling against you? That sensation of something inside you fighting, resisting the same path you've traveled for years. You're not alone. That internal rebellion isn't a flaw. It's a sign, a powerful sign that Carl Jung, one of the most revolutionary thinkers in analytical psychology, studied deeply. Today we're going to explore what happens when your mind finally says enough and begins to rebel against the patterns of your past. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you felt that inner restlessness, that voice whispering to you that there's something more for you, that the path you're following isn't really yours? Jung called it the voice of the soul, that deep part of our being that communicates through dreams, intuitions, and that uncomfortable feeling that something doesn't fit in our current life. The world we live in is designed to keep us asleep, trapped in automatic routines and unconscious patterns. We move like sleepwalkers, following scripts we've inherited from our parents, from society, from painful experiences of the past. Jung discovered that these patterns, these programs, create what he called the persona, that mask we wear to be accepted, to fit in, to survive. But there comes a time when the soul can no longer bear the disconnection. That's when your mind begins to rebel. This rebellion can manifest in many ways, perhaps as a deep dissatisfaction with your job, even though externally everything seems perfect. Maybe as a restlessness in your relationships, a feeling that you're playing a role instead of being genuinely yourself. Or it can appear as anxiety, as that constant feeling that something important is slipping through your hands. Jung understood that these symptoms are not disorders that we should silence with distractions or medications. They are messengers. They are the cry of your soul asking for authenticity. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This powerful phrase from Jung reveals a transformative truth. We cannot change what we don't recognize. As long as we continue to ignore these signs of internal rebellion, we'll remain trapped in the same painful cycles, repeating the same mistakes, drawn to the same situations and people that reflect our unhealed wounds. Think about your own life for a moment. Are there patterns you keep repeating? Relationships that seem different at first but end up in the same place? Work situations where, even though you change companies, you end up feeling equally frustrated? These are not accidents or bad luck. Jung called them synchronicities, external manifestations of your unconscious internal reality. For Jung, the mind's rebellion against the past begins when the conscious I finally perceives the suffering these patterns are causing. It's as if a part of you finally wakes up and says, I can't continue like this. There's something more for me. This awakening is the beginning of what Jung called the process of individuation, the journey to become who you really are, beyond the expectations, traumas, and limitations you've internalized. It's the path to wholeness, to the integration of all the parts of yourself that you've denied, repressed, or disconnected from. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This path isn't easy. When your mind rebels against the past, you enter what Jung called the dark night of the soul. It's a period of deep confusion and dismantling. Everything you thought you knew about yourself, about life, about what's possible for you, begins to unravel. Why does this happen? Because you've been living within a belief system that isn't really yours. You've been navigating life with a map that someone else drew for you. And now your soul is saying, this is not my path, this is not my map. Jung discovered that this internal rebellion is, in reality, an act of self-love. It's your most authentic self, refusing to continue living a life that is too small, too limited, too disconnected from your true potential. But what happens when you finally listen to this rebellion? When you stop resisting and start paying attention? According to Jung, something extraordinary happens. You begin to encounter what he called the shadow, all those parts of yourself that you've repressed, denied, or judged as unacceptable. They can be your deepest desires, your most intense emotions, your most uncomfortable truths, everything that didn't fit into the image you thought you should project to the world. This encounter with the shadow is transformative. Jung said, "It's not by becoming angels that we perfect ourselves, but by integrating our dark side. Because by confronting and embracing what you've denied, you recover the vital energy you've spent on repression. You recover essential parts of yourself. Imagine for a moment that you've been living in a house with many rooms, but you've only occupied a small part of it. The rest remains closed in darkness. The process of integrating the shadow is like opening those rooms one by one, allowing light to enter, discovering forgotten treasures, unrecognized capabilities, sensations you feared to feel. This process is what triggers a profound transformation in how you relate to yourself and to others." Jung observed that when we begin to recognize and accept our own shadow, we become less critical and more compassionate, both with ourselves and with others. We no longer need to project our unrecognized aspects onto the people around us. Think about it. How many times have you harshly judged someone for a behavior that you secretly fear or repress in yourself? Jung showed us that our most severe judgments often reveal our own unhealed wounds, our own denied parts. When your mind rebels against the past, it's inviting you to this deeper level of self-knowledge and self-acceptance. It's asking you to abandon the illusion of perfection and embrace the totality of your being, with all its contradictions, its lights and its shadows. This is an alchemical process. For Jung, alchemy was not simply a primitive attempt to transform metals into gold, but a profound metaphor for the process of psychic transformation. Lead represents our wounds, our traumas, our limiting patterns. Gold is our authentic, integrated, complete self. And the transformation occurs in the crucible of self-knowledge, when we have the courage to look at what we previously didn't want to see, to feel what we've avoided feeling, to recognize truths we've been denying. Jung discovered that our unconscious contains not only what we've repressed individually, but also what he called the collective unconscious, that reservoir of patterns, symbols, and archetypes that we share as humanity. In times of personal transformation, these archetypes are activated to guide us. The hero archetype represents our journey to overcome obstacles and discover our inner strength. The sage guides us toward discernment and truth. The shadow challenges us to integrate what we've rejected. The child reminds us of our innocence and creative potential. And the higher self represents our connection to something larger than ourselves, that transcendent dimension that Jung recognized as essential to the human psyche. When your mind rebels against the past, all these archetypes come into play, orchestrating a profound reorganization of your identity and your perception of reality. But there's an enormous obstacle that Jung identified in this process: fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of what others will think, fear of losing what we believe we are. This fear is not trivial. It's a natural response to the symbolic death that precedes all rebirth. Because for your authentic self to be born, the identity built on false foundations must die. You must let go of the limiting narratives you've confused with your identity. And this is where many stop. This is where we return to the familiar, even if the familiar harms us. Jung understood it perfectly. I would rather be whole than good. This revolutionary phrase challenges the notion that we must conform to external definitions of goodness or success at the cost of our internal integrity. Those who have the courage to continue, to move through fear and uncertainty, experience what Jung described as synchronicity, that mysterious alignment between the inner and outer worlds where meaningful coincidences, chance encounters, and unexpected opportunities begin to appear, guiding you toward your authentic path. How does this manifest in everyday life? In countless ways. Perhaps you begin to meet people who resonate with your true self, not with the mask you've been wearing. Maybe opportunities appear that you would never have considered before, but which now seem perfectly aligned with your deepest values. Or perhaps you notice that situations that previously caused you anxiety and stress now flow with surprising ease. Jung observed that when you stop resisting the rebellion of your mind and begin to flow with it, your vital energy, what he called libido, is released from neurotic patterns and reorients toward growth and creativity. This doesn't mean the path is always smooth. Jung was realistic about the difficulties of transformation. There is no birth of consciousness without pain, he stated. The process of awakening and transformation involves facing uncomfortable truths, feeling emotions we've avoided, and sometimes making difficult decisions that may alter the course of our external life. Think about the areas of your life where you feel that tension, that restlessness, that feeling that something must change. Perhaps it's a relationship where you feel invisible or disconnected. Maybe it's a job that drains your energy instead of nurturing it. Or it could be a pattern of self-criticism or self-doubt that has limited your expression for years. Jung invites us to see these areas not as problems to solve, but as portals to greater self-knowledge and freedom. Every problem contains a seed of transformation if we're willing to ask, what is this showing me about myself? What part of me is seeking expression or healing through this situation? When your mind rebels against the past, it's inviting you to this deeper level of questioning and discovery. It's asking you to abandon easy answers and superficial solutions and to immerse yourself in the depths of your being. This process of questioning and discovery is what Jung called confrontation with the unconscious. It's not an intellectual exercise, but a lived experience, felt at all levels of your being. It can manifest through powerful dreams, moments of deep intuition, or crises that seem to dismantle your life as you knew it. Through this confrontation, you begin to distinguish between the voice of your conditioning, what Jung called the complex, and the voice of your authentic self. The complex speaks from fear, lack, and past wounds. Your authentic self speaks from fullness, truth, and the present moment. Learning to recognize these different voices is an art that Jung cultivated through practices such as active imagination, dream analysis, and symbolic amplification. They are tools for dialoguing with the unconscious, for establishing a conscious relationship with those parts of you that have remained in the shadow. This dialogue transforms the rebellion of the mind into a revolution of consciousness. You're no longer fighting against yourself, but collaborating with all parts of your being toward a common goal, your integrity and freedom. Jung discovered that this process not only transforms the individual, but has an impact on the collective field. The world hangs on a thin thread, and that thread is the psyche of each person, he wrote. Each time a person has the courage to face their own shadows, to release their limiting patterns and live from greater authenticity, they elevate the consciousness of all humanity. This is the revolutionary power of the mind's rebellion against the past. It's not just a personal journey of transformation, but an act of service to the world. How can you know if you're in this process? Jung identified certain revealing signs. Perhaps you feel a growing dissatisfaction with explanations or solutions that previously seemed sufficient to you. Maybe you notice an emerging interest in the symbolic, the mystical, or the profound. Or possibly you're experiencing an intensification of your dreams, more vivid and loaded with symbols that seem to want to communicate something important to you. These are signs that the unconscious is activating, seeking greater integration with your consciousness. They're not symptoms of madness, as many fear, but indicators of a natural and necessary process of psychic expansion. For Jung, true madness was continuing to live a fragmented life, disconnected from essential parts of oneself, trapped in patterns that generate suffering. True sanity is the movement toward wholeness, toward the integration of all aspects of our being. This movement toward wholeness is not linear. Jung described it as spiral, advancing and retreating, visiting the same themes at increasingly deeper levels of understanding and acceptance. Sometimes you may feel you've gone backward, that you've fallen into old patterns you thought you'd overcome. But even these apparent setbacks are part of the process, opportunities to integrate more subtle aspects of your patterns. The key is to maintain what Jung called a symbolic attitude, the ability to see beyond the surface of events and recognize their deeper meaning. This attitude allows us to find meaning even in suffering, learning in challenges, and purpose in crises. One of Jung's most profound discoveries was that the human psyche has a natural tendency toward healing and wholeness. He called it the transcendent function, that innate capacity to integrate the opposites within us and create something new, something broader, that transcends the apparent contradiction. This function operates naturally when we stop interfering with the process, when we abandon our attempt to control, to force, to rush. The rebellion of the mind against the past is a call to trust this innate wisdom, to allow the process to unfold according to its own time and rhythm. How can we support this process? Jung prescribed several practices. The first and fundamental one is attention, paying attention to your dreams, your fantasies, your emotional reactions, the recurring patterns in your life. Conscious attention is the fertile ground where transformation can flourish. Another essential practice is inner dialogue, learning to communicate with the different parts of oneself, especially those we've ignored or repressed. Jung developed techniques such as active imagination to facilitate this dialogue, allowing the figures of the unconscious to express themselves and be heard. Creative expression is also vital. Jung was a great advocate of art as a vehicle for psychic transformation. Through drawing, writing, music, movement, we can give tangible form to unconscious energies and contents, facilitating their integration into consciousness. And finally, Jung deeply valued authentic relationship. He discovered that the presence of a compassionate witness, whether a therapist, a close friend, or a mentor, can catalyze the transformation process. Being truly seen and heard in our truth, without judgment or expectations, is one of the most healing experiences we can have. When your mind rebels against the past, these practices become precious tools for navigating the process with more grace and awareness. They don't eliminate the challenges, but they help you find meaning and direction in the midst of them. This journey of transformation that Jung mapped has no endpoint, no destination where we can say, "I've arrived." It's a continuous unfolding, a constant revelation of increasingly deeper layers of our being. Jung described it as a process of becoming rather than achieving. And yet there are recognizable milestones along the way, moments of profound integration where you feel a new internal coherence, an alignment between what you think, feel, and do. Moments of clarity where purposes and values that were nebulous crystallize. Moments of peace where the voices of self-criticism and judgment quiet, replaced by a compassionate acceptance. These moments are not permanent. Life continues presenting challenges and opportunities for further growth. But each time we go through the cycle of disintegration and reintegration, each time we have the courage to face our shadows and recover lost parts of ourselves, we strengthen our capacity to live from greater authenticity and freedom. The rebellion of the mind against the past is, ultimately, an act of love. It's the love of your deepest self calling you home, to your truth, to your essence. It's the love that dares to destabilize the known so that the authentic can emerge. It's the love that chooses integrity over comfort, truth over illusion. Jung understood that this process is not optional if we want to live fully. Your vision will become clear, he wrote, only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. The invitation is always there. The rebellion of your mind against the limiting patterns of the past is the first whisper of a new dawn in your consciousness. You can resist it, you can ignore it, you can try to silence it with distractions, substances, or frantic activity. Or you can listen to it, honor it, follow it toward the extraordinary life that awaits when you finally have the courage to be who you really are. Think for a moment. What would happen if, instead of fearing this internal rebellion, you welcomed it as an ally? What possibilities would open up if you allowed the repressed parts of yourself to finally have a voice? What life could you create if your decisions arose from your deepest truth, not from your fears or conditioning? Jung reminded us that The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This privilege is available to you now. No matter your age, your circumstances, or how long you've lived disconnected from your authenticity. The moment to awaken, to listen to the rebellion of your mind against the limitations of the past, is always now. This video is an invitation to look deeper, to question yourself, to explore those parts of you that have remained silent for too long. An invitation to see your crises, your concerns, your moments of internal rebellion, not as problems to solve, but as portals to a fuller and more authentic life. If this message has resonated with you, if you feel that spark of recognition inside, I invite you to take a next step. Share this video with someone you think might benefit from hearing it. Leave me a comment sharing which part resonated most with you or what questions arose as you were listening. Subscribe to the channel to receive more content that supports you in this journey of self-discovery and transformation. Remember that you're not alone in this process. Millions of people around the world are awakening, questioning limiting patterns, and seeking a more authentic way to live. Each time one of us has the courage to look within and follow the guidance of our true self, we create an expanding wave that inspires and elevates others. Jung dedicated his life to mapping this territory of psychic transformation, not just out of scientific or intellectual interest, but because he deeply believed in the human potential for healing and growth. His work reminds us that our deepest crises contain the seeds of our greatest evolution, that our shadows guard some of our most precious gifts, and that the rebellion of our mind against the past is the first step toward a more conscious and fulfilling future. So the next time you feel that inner restlessness, that sensation that something inside you is resisting the path you followed until now, remember, it's not a mistake. It's not a flaw. It's your most authentic self calling you home. And the journey that opens before you, though challenging, is the most important you will ever undertake. Thank you for your presence, your openness, and for being part of this community of seekers and explorers. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue to delve into the mysteries and wonders of the human psyche, always inspired by Carl Jung's profound discoveries. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to receive alerts about new videos. And remember, when your mind rebels against the past, it's not the end of your world. It's the beginning of your freedom.